Greetings and salutations. What's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix. I am back with another edition of the Astro Weather. I hope all of you are in one semi-coherent molecular structure and vibing with the time. So we are going to do something a little bit different today. I got a lot of feedback on yesterday's show, and some of the constructive feedback that I got was that I take too long talking to people at the beginning of the show, which is one of my favorite parts of the day. So we're going to try something a little bit different today. I'm gonna let people get into the chat and sort of assemble here, and I'll talk and I'll do a little meet and greet at the beginning of the show, and then I'm going to jump into the weather much quicker, and then at the end of the show I'll come back in, and then I'll spend more time with you guys. So let's see how this goes. We're going to try this new format, and that way it won't take 20 minutes to get to what we're talking about. So I think some people appreciate it, and doesn't mean that I don't care about you. I don't love you. It just means that we're gonna. Hey, look, we're in this season where there's a lot of mutable energy and change. So I'm going to change things up just a little bit. Let's do about 5 minutes here of meet and greet. Of course, there's DJ MC at the top of the hit parade. Julie 333, Julie Sunshine 333, headed out for a CAT scan. New hip to see if the MRSA and the incision has, in fact, oh my God. All right, Julie. God bless. I hope that the stars and the biology are with you today. So there you go. You're a pretty tough gal, so I have no doubt you'll soldier through no matter what. Scott Jersey's here. What's up, Scott? Good to see you. Kelly B. Stormy in the Appalachians. Nora Rashid, the Queen of Speed. We'll be seeing her next week here in the Hill Country. Scrubbies, late start. Gonna walk that dog if you don't know how to do it. Steven Tyler will show you. Lena Winkler, good morning. Forward to the show. Something about your voice helps me get things going. Thank you for the gift. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. Laura E., good morning from Vermont. Off to the laundromat in the rain. Oh, the days of the laundromat. I remember those days. I remember those days all too well. All right, you keep warm and dry. Brandy Hadada checking in from Sin City. There's Tom Jordan in the house. Soul Traveler. It's Sharon Lewis's birthday time. She's 76. I should be used to this precipice. I know the tools. Roommates both borderline, projecting childhood wounds. The mind of Christ. Okay, I tell you what we're gonna do here. We're gonna play you the birthday song. Sharon Lewis gets the birthday song. You know how this works. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Birthday song. There it is. Okay, what are you going to get? What are you going to get, Sharon Lewis? What are you going to get? I don't like repeating birthdays. Some of these are just kind of hokey. I'm going to repeat this one. I really like the Keith Urban birthday song. It's not very long, and he does such a good job with it. So you're going to get Keith Urban today because I think it's a very good rendition of the
birthdays. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
There you go, Sharon. All right. I hope that gets you in a bit of a good mood. Keith Urban's kind of a handsome guy. Kanya Curtis back in the house. Hi, Kanya. 6'8", was it 6 to 8 inches of Miss Helene on the way, all West North Carolina on an edge. Oh boy, here we go. There she is, saving Austin one tooth at a time. The lovely and talented one, Dr. Joan S. Soul Travelers here. My man Ryan is here. Mary Lee is here. We got a all-star cast. Darling Road Trip 1981. Back-to-back Joan W. And Melissa Stanton. The hurricane parties begin in Florida. Do you guys drink hurricanes in Florida for your birthday parties or your hurricane parties? We got Moonsprout. We got Nicole DePaulo. We got PMSO. What's going on, Janine? Warlanda's cup of coffee with Scream. It's supposed to stall out over Nashville. Boy, that's a big area, big wide area. Neil Smith, Sue Leonard, Rainbows and Butterflies, the man Steve, Thor at the Door. Yes, you can sign up and support the show. The locals. And Jeff Rosen's back. Ba 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 da. Hello all. The Obamas are getting outed about Diddy parties. The Diddy party thing is getting kind of crazy. Will anything happen? Will anything happen in Diddy world? A lot of interesting resignations as CEOs. There's a picture of Kobe Bryant a week before he died at a Diddy party. That's another story. All right, let's do this. I'm gonna jump into the weather. 12 minutes in. All right, 12 minutes in. I'm gonna jump into the weather. We're gonna do start of the day, and then I'm gonna come back and spend quality time with you. How's that? Let's do that. This is we're going to play with this model here. We're going to try to get going by about 8:12. It gives people enough time to show up, and then we'll talk about the important things. We got this eclipse coming up next week. The sun is going to be at 10. I think we're right around 10. Libra. So I think the eclipse, if I'm not mistaken, is on Wednesday. We'll do a bit of a deeper dive on the eclipse on Sunday night. So that'll be a bit of a tease. But when you just look at the chart like this, the energy is incredibly chaotic, like we talked about yesterday. And so we've got this Mars Moon conjunction, which we also talked. Yes, I know. You need to be. Peachy says she needs a moment. Here you go. Moon Mars conjunction. So we were looking at Twiggy last week and how Twiggy had the Moon Mars conjunction, and it seemed, and especially in the first house, it seemed to burn. It seemed to be related to her metabolism in the first house in Leo, semi-sextile her Uranus in the 12th. So I'm not saying today is one of those days where you're going to burn a bunch of calories, although you might. But the degree of heightened sensitivity and prickliness is code red. This is a code red ass day with Moon Mars conjunction. Again, for you people that are in Florida or the Southeast, I mean, I would think that from a hurricane or a meteorological standpoint, that this is not the best aspect to have as you're coming in to a major weather event in Cancer. But if you're not motivated and you're not ready for what's happening, well, this aspect will get your ass moving. Okay. So get going if you need to do things. And if you're listening to this, maybe you can listen to it while you're doing things, right? This is one of those aspects, especially around the home, batten down the hatches And if we're really looking at this from this idea of water and the water perspective, it is violent water. And so I'm going to make an analogy here between nature and humanity, and that at times natural events represent uh, parts of our collective emotional body that need to get expressed. And I know this sounds a little crazy, but I think that so if there's a lot of pent up emotion, which there seems to be, we're living in very emotional times. I was on Twitter last night for almost 2 hours longer than I needed to be, and I was going deep into these threads where, apparently Trump did this interview recently. I don't know how long ago, where this journalist was, trying to really get him to understand the severity of the vaccination program, also known as Operation Warp Speed. And, it was typical Trump. And he, he's never going to cop to the fact that what happened deeply impacted lots of lives. And it's fascinating to watch how there are people who are just incredibly bitter and acrimonious around. And I understand it. I don't like the fact that, like, just for me, I'm sorry if I'm getting off track here, but this is the emotional part. Like, you can't separate. Like, I could just feel this, and it's like this storm that's raging against Trump, and it's not coming from the left, right? It's coming from the right and people who are into truth and people who are or were MAGA people. There's a lot of contentious rage towards him, not necessarily about how he handled COVID, although that's in there, but it's about the incessant victory laps that he's done since then. And then there's a new one. And so it's been making the rounds on Twitter, and it is like, it's like a bolt of lightning that hits a tree and splits the tree right in two. And to me, this is this Moon Mars conjunction. There's all this intense emotional energy that's roiling, and now we've got the storm coming in here in the U.S. And this Moon Mars conjunction feels violent. Like, it has a sense of real intensity and violence, just, I would say, meteorologically, but also what people are walking around with. You throw in also a square that's going on here, and that square with Moon Mars is coming into the sun, right? Because the sun is at 2 Libra, but it's still in square with Mars, right? And the sun is going to continue to move forward. We talked about this yesterday, and get into this, deeper, hard cardinal square, Sun Mars. And I mean, I think that this is not just highly emotional, but I also feel like it's very violent. That the closer the sun moves towards, especially towards the eclipse, because that eclipse is going to square Mars. I think next week, we're looking at potentially like really high levels of peak violence. And so we all have a connection to that in some way, right? We're either observing it or we're dealing with it on a personal level. And how do we deal with that? So you have to move the energy. You have to move the stuck emotional energy. You got to work out, or you've got to do something. Or you have to do something, or else you're going to get caught up in this volatility. It's going to be volatile anyway. So today really sets this thing off, right? Because remember, when we get into the eclipse, that moon is going to be right over here, right? It's going to be right in Libra. And so the square is the trigger for the eclipse. So everything that happens now, right, begins to manifest itself in this eclipse. And in Libra, civility goes out the door. That's going to be the nature of the beast. Civility will go out the door. Do I think that there's some positive aspects to an eclipse? Yeah, quite possibly if you're willing to face your fears and look at your shadow. Look, I've seen people who I've seen eclipses really affect people. Like when it's on their sun directly, I have seen this. I've noted it. Um, the most notable for me was when my son, my biological son, experienced an eclipse in Pisces back when these nodes were reversed, right? Where the true node was in Virgo and the south node was in Pisces, and he had this eclipse. It was, oh man, it was brutal. It was. I mean, I watched it in real time. It was almost like he was a different kid after this eclipse. Very difficult to sit there and witness, especially as an astrologer. I'm like, holy shit, I got a front row seat for this. Right. So today's this period right here, today, especially with Moon Mars conjunction, very important. Very important. Like what you do today, what you sow today, your actions, your emotions today are going to be the things that will come up for you during this eclipse because it's triggered by the moon at a 90-degree angle. And of course, with Libra, we're trying to be, to the best of our ability, mindful and conscientious and diplomatic and polite, which is all those things that Libra does really, really well, right? This today puts a strain on it, a super strain. So it's not just, so we're looking at this at three levels. We're looking at this meteorologically. And I do think that this Moon Mars conjunction does represent a deluge, okay? But it's also an emotional deluge in potentially inside all of us. It feels, I mean, to me, this is the energy of threat, right? The imminent threat, because that's what Cancer instinctually feels and understands, right? It is the energy of the mother who's protective of her brood and gets imminent threat vibes. That's what's supposed to happen. I think this could be a tough day for women in general. Abortion is going to be front and center today. It's going to be a very, very big theme. Abortion, front and center. Moon, Mars. The other thing, too, is what's going on in DC with money and fiscal restraint. And you've got this tug of war going on between Thomas Massey and Mike Johnson and the spending bill, which, of course, Johnson wants to delay until Christmas. And then what happens? Nobody's around. They vote. I mean, the same old shit, right? But guess what? Thomas Massey has Twitter, and he has a massive Twitter following. And he's really using Twitter incredibly well. So, again, when we get into Cancer, which is, I believe, one of the most conservative signs, Cancer and Virgo, I think, are the two most conservative signs. You can throw Capricorn in there. But again, that's all part of the story as well. Like, sort of, this is a very interesting day on so many levels, and we're just leaning into this conjunction and the square to the sun. Mercury here, cooler heads prevail, theoretically 28 degrees Virgo, and coming in here to the Grand Trine Uranus, trine Pluto, which is good. I mean, you can solve problems with this Mercury. Even though it's at the end of Virgo, you can still solve problems, and you can solve them very quickly. And so today, right, I decided to adapt and do something different with the show and get the weather going faster so that I don't lose so many people, and I get, theoretically people like it more, right? So I'm making, an executive decision because I started to talk about it. I didn't expect the feedback. I got the feedback, and I'm listening. Right. And this is how it works, right? I'm showing you in real time, like how this works. Okay, good. You want the weather faster? We're gonna get there faster. And guess what? I still won't leave you out. we're still in that Sun Neptune opposition, and the Sun is starting to separate a little bit, but it's still in that opposition by a degree, and that's so. Again, like I just find this energy. Um, and maybe it's because Jupiter is conjunct Trump's Sun, and I'm not making any excuses for Trump. Okay, I'm not making any, and I have some issues from that time. And believe it or not, the issues I have more to do with George Floyd and the burning of the country than the COVID thing. Because for me, and I know for a lot of you, uh, we were switched on, and we made choices. My choice was to not get the jab and not put a mask on, and my choice was to get on YouTube and talk about this every single day so that we knew what was going on in the world. We could shine a light on the bullshit. And we were deep in the pocket on this stuff, right? And so for me, when I look back at that time with Trump and what happened, it was one of the most important moments of my life, right? Because it helped me get sharper and more focused. And it's like, okay, game on, let's go, right? Game on. And I don't, so I don't see Operation Warp Speed or what happened with Trump in the same way that other people do, because it was a global operation. And what people fail to understand is that there were a shit ton of blank shots. There were a shit ton of blank shots. There was a ton of saline in a lot of those concoctions. I mean, yeah, were you playing Russian roulette? You kind of were, right? But there were a lot of placebos in there, and we talked about all this stuff. So at the end of the day, I didn't feel like, okay, this is that my I don't know. It's hard to explain. Yes, things became more difficult, but I was determined not to let it define my reality. And if it was going to define my reality, it was going to define my reality in a way that was going to be positive. It was like, okay, let's go. Fucking game on. And David Palmer, again, I will bring up his name here. David Palmer was the exact same way. And David and I weren't really in communication at that time. Later we would be and team up and join forces on some very powerful live streams. But I look at it I look at that time very differently. Now, the victory lap and all the other stuff, I've got a whole different mindset about, right? But the reason I'm bringing this up is that Jupiter is conjuncting Trump's Sun. And so there's a big spotlight on him and Operation Warp Speed and a lot of people who were really pissed at what happened and how he let it. I'm not going to spend the rest of the show getting into this, but there was a time early on with what was going on that Trump was trying to get out of it. It was clear he was trying to get out of it. He was talking about hydroxychloroquine. He said, this is 2 weeks and we'll be through. He was talking about ivermectin. He was talking about these things. He was talking about MMS, even though people made fun of him and said it was bleach. And it's really interesting because Democrats and progressives, if you go back in time, they were more alternatively health conscious than the so-called people on the right. The so-called people on the right would just march right in to their allopathic magicians. But then somewhere along the way, they got kind of hip. And the people on the left who had sort of pioneered alternative medicine in a lot of ways, all of a sudden now they're taking the corporate line and they're doing what they were told to do. Right. So it was just, fascinating, strange. And again, it's one of those things in our recent history that's not been reconciled. So there is a lot of tension around this. Jupiter, I believe, went retrograde, if I'm not mistaken. Let me zoom in here. Let's see. Yeah, so Jupiter is about to go retrograde. It's about to go, and so we'll have Jupiter retrograde during the night of the invention, the presidential selection. Saturn's retrograde. It's at 14, and it's trine Mars and trine the Moon. So again, if you people are in an emergency related area, this is actually a really good aspect for you. You just stay focused and get what you need to get done, and have a here's what I think: have a determined mindset, right? A determined mindset and a will. The star of the day is going to be very interesting today because there's some themes in the star of the day that kind of dovetail with this thing I'm about to talk about, which is prayer. And I do believe that that you can summon a higher power in your life. In order to do that, though, you really have to be very clear, and then you have to really let go of that experience. And then I think in some ways you have to become prayer in action. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but you almost have to create this field inside of yourself where you become the living prayer, so that everything you do after your moment of, okay, tether the camel and then trusting God, right? Everything you do is not based on fear of what might happen or a sense of, looming anxiety, but more along the lines of, I would say, a gritty determination that you're willing to accept whatever comes on the terms that the universe or God brings to you, and that there's I would say a gritty resignation. If you do that, right? If you can just like toe that line, between faith and fear, right, and be right in the center of that thing, then chances are you're gonna be fine no matter what happens, because you've braced yourself for the worst, and then you have invoked to the best of your ability the best, right? And so when you begin to get into this territory, I always feel like, when people talk about manifestation, which is sort of a cousin of prayer, I guess, meditation, manifestation, and prayer, one of the things that's really important is including others in your prayer, right? So if you're quietly having a moment, right, and you're saying, look, can you please minimize the damage for people, or completely neutralize the damage for not just me but the people that are in our county, that are in our country, that are, can you help provide us with the strength and the courage to face what's coming, right? Like, if you expand your circle of what you need, guess what? It becomes bigger, and it's not just about you. It's not just about your little needs getting met. And that's not to say that your little needs aren't important, right? If you got a kid that's going into surgery, or like some of the people in our show, like Julie today, like, your little needs are important. But if you can extend that out and say, and widen that to be inclusive of other people, beings, however they're connected in your circle of life, that means that the intention of what you're attempting to bring in through an invocation of spirit has a wider net and becomes more powerful. So for me, this is what this Saturn Mars, Saturn Moon trine is. Like, you are a living, walking, breathing manifestation of that. And you're ready to deal with whatever comes your way. That's how this thing works. So if you're in that part of the world, it's about preparation and then mindset, and then there's not much more you can do. And then you're good to go. Or as good to go as you can. Venus coming into that, still in that Pluto square. And we'll be there pretty much all the way up to the eclipse. Another very interesting and intense transit for the eclipse. Today, however, Venus is moving more into trine with Mars, which I like. I think it's really good for the male-female connection and the sexes finding a way to work together versus against each other. A lot going on here, boys and girls. I spend a lot of time, but I have to move on with the show because guess what? We have the star of the day, and not only that, I need to spend a little time with you because I spent so much time on the weather. So let's get the banner up here. And I hope you are enjoying the fact that I'm getting to these things much earlier. And I promise we will have a moment at the end. Okay, so let's talk True Hemp Science, which is the sponsor of this segment. And all you need to do is type in 15MINS, spend $100, and you get the goodie bag, which includes a couple of starlights and some other really cool stuff. Usually Chris will have these personal vials where you get to sample some of the product, but it's more than just once. You'll get a pretty good taste a few times. And it's sort of like getting a little order on top of your order. And when you support True Hemp Science, guess what? You're supporting a Main Street business. $150 more gets you free shipping. There's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. I think Chris will be with us on Saturday at the event. He normally sets up shop and interacts with us and has a really great time. All right, let's talk star of the day. Man, oh man, Christopher Reeve. What a complicated, complex story. And I think I've left enough time to go through the day that he fell off his horse because I wanted to see what happened on that day. Could we track what happened astrologically? And boys and girls, you're going to see it. So let's do a little bit of background on Chris Reeve. He was born into a blue blood family. His lineage goes back to the Mayflower and goes back to England. He grew up in upstate New York. He was wealthy. He was a person of privilege. He took up acting at the age of 9. And that's what he wanted to do. That's what he wanted to become, was an actor. So that's what his life was all about. And he, very early on, studied acting, and then he would go to England and do a lot of acting on the Globe Theater. Like, he was a serious stage actor. And being Leo rising is always going to help you as an actor. And if you look at his chart, he's got that South Node Pluto conjunction. Let me talk a little bit about that. And Pluto is also conjunct his ascendant, by the way. So when Chris Reeve would go through something, he would go through it very intensely, like very intensely. So when he took on the role of Superman, which all these other actors wanted, but he was tall but fairly slight. And he worked with a training coach, an English strength coach. And this guy would get him up in the morning. He would do 2 hours of road work, which is what the boxers call it. And then he would do strength. He would do this every day. And he did this throughout the entirety of the Superman movies. And I believe there were 5 of them. So what you see with Christopher Reeve inside the Superman suit is everything that he worked on. And he would throw himself into things very intensely. with Pluto, right? And he's got that Pluto South Node conjunction. And ultimately, I think it would save him. And we'll talk about his injury, which is pretty fucking tragic. He's got Sun, Mercury in Libra. He's got all these planets in Libra. Like he's, a very good looking guy. He had a very difficult relationship with his father. You can see that down there, Saturn Neptune conjunction. Usually, when Saturn's in the third house or the moon is in the third house, the father or the mother is more like an older brother or sister. And there was a point in Reeve's life where he stopped talking to his father because his father was, kind of a white collar red ass and was always driving his kids to be better, more, better, more. So for Reeve, in order to meet his father's demands, he felt like he had to grow up faster and mature faster, be more serious. And he didn't really reconcile with his father until he got injured. And when I say injured, I'm talking fucking injured. So you can see this down here with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction and, squaring Uranus. And the interesting thing about Reeve, too, is that when I went through his bio last night, he turned down so many roles that would have changed his fucking career. Not like he had a good career, but he was much more interested in smaller movies and independent productions. And I think that's very third housey. Like the ninth house is big. It's like opera. It's like the grand spectacle. And so Reeve is going after these like specialty movies, right? And one of the roles that he plays is Somewhere in Time. He plays a time traveler. And who is it? Jane, what's her name? I always forget her last name. She played the medicine woman. He actually, in that movie, falls in love with her, like on the set, right? So there's this blurring of the lines with Venus and Neptune. And what's interesting is that Saturn rules time, and it's a time travel movie. So he falls in love with her, but there's this woman in England who's like, I don't know, like she might be an agent or an actress. Anyway, finds out she's pregnant with one of his kids. And then, so he breaks it off with her and winds up having another kid with this woman. And so they try to make it work, but they can't. But they have this relationship. So he lives in New York. And one of the reasons why he doesn't take a bunch of roles, he doesn't want to move to LA. Because back then he would get on a Concorde and it would take him about 2 hours to fly from New York to London to go visit his kids. And he did it all the time. It's like me driving to Jones' house. Swear to God, same amount of time. So Reeve is very unusual in this regard. Of course, he's a big stage guy. And he's got Jupiter and Taurus, so of course he comes from means. But also I feel like Jupiter and Taurus in the 10th house is more reflective of stage than movie. Right? All right, let's get into the shit here with Chris Reeve and the accident. So being a typical Leo or Pluto first house person, he has a role where he has to learn how to ride a horse. So he rides a horse, but it's like, oh, I'm not just going to ride a horse. I'm going to do it at a high level. I'm going to get really good at this. So he gets into, competitive horse riding with, jumping over gates and shit like that, right? So he has this yod going on with Moon Mars. What sign is that in? It's in Sagittarius. Sagittarius, right? What is Sagittarius? Rules horses. And he's got that Moon Mars conjunction, which we've been talking about. It's all about burning energy, right? And it trines his ascendant. So when he acts, especially as Superman, that Mars comes right through. Man, you believe he's Superman, right? He's when we think of all the different Supermen, who do we really think of? We think of Christopher Reeve. Brendan Routh or Roush, whatever the guy's name is. Like, who fucking cares? This is the guy right here, right? But he has this yod. And what's in the yod? Jupiter, which is the ruler of Sagittarius, right? And Uranus. So he's got this nice sextile, which is I think good for improvisation, although I think this is a guy that was not really that big into improvisation. He was a stage actor. But there's something going on here with Moon Mars, right? There's something going on here, and Uranus is sudden. Look at Chiron. Chiron is in Capricorn, and what's it doing? It's squaring his sun, squaring Mercury. What does Capricorn rule? It rules the back and the skeletal system. He's got a square there, and boy, is that square going to be a big deal in his life. Let me just bring up this chart. I wish I had more time to talk about Christopher Reeve, because what he went through was nothing short of fucking heroic. So this is the day that he has this accident. And I want you to look at some of these transits. It's a Mercury retrograde in Gemini, and what's it doing? It's opposing his moon Mars. Where's Jupiter? It's in Sagittarius. What is it? It's retrograde. Holy shit. All right. So this is one of these things. Like, if you're an astrologer and you know Chris Reeve and you see this chart and you say, hey, listen, man, you can't ride today. You cannot do this today. If you do this today, you are going to be potentially mortally injured. Like, number one, would you be able to do it? Number two, would Reeve listen? And number three, would that have robbed him of something that he ultimately needed to do? We're in very tricky territory here. He's got Saturn going through his 8th house. We already determined that Chiron in Capricorn rules like your entire skeletal structure. Saturn in the 8th house is like a death, right? You're going through a metaphoric death. And oh, by the way, it's opposing his natal Pluto. And oh, by the way, Mars is on his natal Pluto on this very day. Like, the aspects are fucking crazy here. This is it. This is the accident that's waiting to happen. And so let me give you just a brief rundown of what takes place in his life. He's unconscious after he falls off the store. By the way, the horse had previously jumped a 7-foot and 8-foot gate, like these things they jump over. But there was a much smaller 3-foot one, but it was like W shaped. Right. So it was smaller, but it was kind of wider. And the horse came up to it and basically saw this and just stopped. Reeve flies over the top, and he wakes up 5 days later in the hospital, and he's delirious. He's a quadriplegic at that point. And so there was this woman who at that time had become his wife. He got married, and she basically said, look, if you want out, I understand it, but I'll be here with you no matter who you are. And so she stood by him, and he had to have this really drastic surgery. Like, he couldn't even breathe on his own. He was on a ventilator. And so he has this drastic surgery. I mean, I don't want to get into the details, but it's very, very intense, super, super intense, just to allow him to breathe a little bit. And the night before his surgery, this strange little man comes in, and he's wearing a doctor's gown. He's got crazy, funny hair. He's wearing these glasses. And Reeve is kind of propped up in his bed, and he's like, who the fuck are you? What's going on? And he says that he's a proctologist, and he's going to give him a rectal exam before his surgery. Turns out it was Robin Williams. And it almost makes me want to cry. Robin Williams came in on the night of his surgery just to make him laugh because they'd been in a movie together. And he said that was the first time I had laughed since the accident. So he goes through this, and then in typical Christopher Reeve fashion, he throws himself into activism. And he really gets into championing kind of experimental therapies for a person like, and he also starts to kind of work out, right? He's got this rigorous routine and he begins to regain some sensation in his body. Like, it's fucking heroic what this guy goes through. Absolutely heroic. And he talks about, it's funny, he talks about prayer and he said, it never worked for me. And he was a Scientologist briefly. It never works for me. It never worked for me. But along the way, somewhere along the way, he becomes a Unitarian. So he does develop a relationship with God. But what he does after his accident in some ways is way more impressive than his body of acting, which was good. But it's not like, I mean, Superman's a mythic role, right? But it's not like he has all these movies. By the way, it was really interesting. There's an interview he does with somebody. I forget. It might be Carson, or it was a talk show, and he was talking about Marlon Brando, and he talks shit about Marlon Brando. Like, nobody talks shit about Marlon Brando, but Christopher Reeve did, and he basically called him lazy. Because Marlon Brando got a shit ton of money for playing Christopher Reeve's father in the first Superman movie. And nobody talks shit about Marlon Brando. Christopher Reeve talks shit. Anyway, this guy's life is fucking heroic, right? And he's, out there trying to push the boundaries for stem cells, and he's like banging on George Bush's door. It's like, hey man, there are all these experimental therapies out there to help people. What's the problem? What do you have to lose? So he becomes this champion of experimental therapy. And again, his post-accident life is just fucking heroic. If you have time, go into his Wikipedia page, and if you think your life is tough, go read about what happens to him after this accident. It'll shift your focus for sure. What's also strange about this chart, or just in general, is that Christopher Reeve shares this birthday with Mark Hamill, and they were actually in a movie together. I believe it was called Village of the Damned. Which is kind of odd, right? Like birthday twins in the same movie. All right, let's see. Let me go back in here and hit you guys up now. By all accounts, Christopher was not a nice guy before the accident. I'm sure he could be a prick. I mean, he came from a very privileged background, and he was very, like I said, he was a snob about his roles. He was a total snob. So I believe that. I totally believe that. Tinfoil Tiara, I stay away from horses, got bucked off and had a head injury. You should talk to our girl Veronica's barn about horses. The other thing that's really weird about Christopher Reeve, I got to throw this out there. A week before this accident, he played the role of a paraplegic. Like, how fucking weird is that? Like, is that like some strange life foreshadowing? Is that not Pluto on the ascendant? Feels very faded. Like, how odd is that? Marlon Brando never liked being an actor. He was also a closet queen. I do think Brando liked acting. I think he liked what acting brought to him. As far as a closet queen goes, I'm not sure he was that much of a closet. Brando would fuck anybody. Kelly B says, horses were forced upon me through my mom's love of them. I was never obsessed on her level. She wanted to live through me on the horse show front. How about that? That wasn't the horse. It was more the negligent adults. I'm not sure if that's in reference. Did Reeves inspire Elon Musk Neuralink? That's a good question, Rolanda. I don't know. But that's a very, very good question. Here's what Tom says. When riding once and had to hold on to dear life as it raced back to barn, that horse was dangerous. Weren't him and Robin college roommates? I don't know. Maybe. That could be. I mean, if they were, it was like some kind of acting preparatory school. Let's see what else is clear. I had a childhood friend that died on a horse. It was a huge catalyst for my mediumship. I was literally like 3, 4. I would write to her in my diary when I got older. My experiences with horses, and I got Jupiter in Sagittarius. I used to have a friend in high school, Tracy Templeton, whose father owned a big riding stable horse ranch, and every now and then when I was in high school, I drive over to this place and we'd go riding, and it was so much fun. It was I really enjoyed it. Lives outdoors. I ride every day. Yesterday I rode at night. There we go. Soul Traveler. So lucky to have survived so many horse falls. I guess Chris had a major life lesson there. Stephen the Jupiterian went to a dude ranch when I was about 10. First and last time I rode a horse. Horses are one of those things like you're really either on or off. Right? You're on or off. Kelly B, once again, in hindsight, Christopher may have been why I quit due to fear. I guess something's going on with Lynn. All right, Lynn, we're with you. Love the new format. Kudos for flexibility. Thanks, son of the right hand. There you go. I listen. Roger Williams College. There you go. Let's see. Ride a horse, save a cowboy. That's funny. Anybody else? Jane Seymour. Thank you. I always forget her name. Somehow I remember Jane Alexander more, but I know it's not the same. Not the same Jane. Okay, I think we're pretty much caught up. I got a horse story before I go. I love betting on horses. There you go. Tinfoil tiara. I'm a Sag. I love riding horses, just like crazy results. So I have a very interesting horse story. So when my son was in summer camp, he was young. I don't know, maybe 8 years old, maybe 8. And it was like one of these hoity-toity kind of summer camps. It's not the one that you would go send them to for the entire summer, but it was like in Contra Costa County, and they would do things like horseback riding and rowing. It wasn't your typical, hey, let's play baseball, pick up basketball. Where it wasn't like that. So they would do horseback riding, right? And I would go out there and watch him. I didn't like how he interacted with these horses, to be honest with you. Like, what is he doing with this horse? Yeah, he's like the little kid. He's got the helmet on and everything. Like, what is he doing with this horse? So he says to me, Daddy, I keep dreaming that I fall off the horse. I keep dreaming that I fall off the horse. I'm like, oh, okay. So one day, I don't know whether he's fucking around or what, but he falls off the horse. And he keeps talking about this. And so he gets back on the horse. So I said to his mom, I said, you know, he keeps telling me he has his dream that he falls off the horse. Well, guess what he did? He got back on. Maybe we should keep him off the horse. Maybe we should keep him off the horse. Maybe we should listen to his whatever's going on, right? About 5 days later, I'm at work. I was working at this gym. I get a call. It's his mom. He's fallen off the horse and he broke his tibia. I was the guy who said, hey, he fell. He got back on. Let's get him off the horse. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's life, right? All right. I'm out of here. Thanks for being here. I hope you like the new format. Now look at one more little thing here. Melissa Stanton, the audience, Somewhere in Time was filmed, only has horses and no cars. There you go. Yeah, man. Hey, listen, man. I'm open to the vibes, and I'm pretty good at it. All right, please join us over in 15 minutes. Links are in the chat for both Rumble and Boxcast. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed the new format. We'll be doing this from here on out. Take good care. Love to all of you, and treat each other well, and you'll weather this storm. Trust me, you will weather this storm. Bye for now.